So, happy Feast of St. Francis. Today we celebrate this great saint of the Roman calendar. He was born in Italy, and Francis is actually a derivative of Francesco, which is the little French one, because his father was a merchant who often traveled to France. When he was a young man, Francis grew up with great wealth, and wanted to be a knight, noble, and so he bought all this armor, went off to a fight, and was injured. And he was holed up in a church praying while he was sick. And in this rundown church, he heard Jesus saying from the cross, "Francis, rebuild my church." And he thought he meant the rundown church. So he started, building up the church physically. And he realized that God meant spiritually, rebuild the church spiritually. This was a time and an era of when we had bad popes. And so he started dedicating himself to serving the poor, and his father didn't necessarily like this. So Francis took off all of his possessions and said, I belong to the church, and said to the bishop, "You're my father now." And so he dedicated himself from that moment on to taking care of the poor, living with the poor, helping the poor, serving the poor, and also to simplicity and to caring for the creation, caring for the environment. Others began to attract a following, and people are like, "Hey, Francis, you're really living a holy life. Can we live like you?" And so Francis created an order of Friars Minor, dedicated to, again, serving the poor, dedicated to prayer, dedicated to the Eucharist. Francis was very devoted to the Eucharist. So on this feast day of St. Francis, we remember that our true Father is God. We remember that we belong to God. We celebrate all of God's creation and care for it. And we recognize that even if we don't have a lot, we have a lot because we have God.